I know so many of you who reach out to me every day want me to talk about my experiences growing up queer and Muslim, and here it is. Hi, welcome back to our channel. Today I'm going to be talking about a very personal and serious topic. Anjali and I decided to record our coming out stories separately because we had such different experiences coming out. So as you all know, I was born and raised in New York and I grew up in the Bronx. I grew up in a predominantly South Asian neighborhood. I grew up around Pakistanis, Indians, Bengalis, Nepalis, you name it. And I hail from an immigrant family. My family immigrated here in the 80s. And apart from that, I grew up in a very conservative, very Sunni household. And in the Sunni Muslim household that I grew up in, being gay is not okay. Being queer is not okay. It is seen as a choice. And growing up, my relationship with my mother was always rocky because of other factors that went into my home environment. The first person that I came out to was my cousin, and I love this cousin very much. We are best friends. One day I spontaneously walked into his room and like the bizarre, uncanny, emotional 13-year-old that I was and kind of still am, I look at him and I'm like, I think I'm bi. And my cousin looks at me and goes, okay. And in my head I was like, wow, that was pretty easy. I'm wondering if it's gonna be like that with everyone. So when I first came out, I identified as bisexual throughout my high school years, experimented, and I realized going into college that I was not interested in men at all. But that's not the case with necessarily everyone. Bisexuality is valid on its own, and in my case, I just had this back and forth in my mind where I was like, I like women. No, I love women, and I want to be able to experience that in my life, but I know that the family that I come from won't allow it, and I'm not independent enough on my own to move out. I need to be smart about it, I need to be safe about it, so when I do come out, I'm okay. My thought process was in high school, I can experiment with women all I want and I can enjoy that. When it's time for my mom to get me married, I can just leave that life behind and I can be straight and I can get married. 15-year-old me had no clue what was coming to her and had no clue about what her identity was or what she felt comfortable in. Here I am, gay as One of the first few people that I came out to were my childhood friends. I grew up with a set of girls in my neighborhood and we would do almost everything together. We would go to family friend parties together, we would go to the park, we would hang out every weekend, we would hang out during the weekdays and the evenings. We spent Ramadan together, we would go to the masjid together, and I love them. I still love them. But it was different when I came out when I was younger. Some of the girls didn't understand. They thought that because I liked girls, I would also end up liking them. I think that obviously has changed. I'm still really good friends with them, but just that initial reaction, I was a bit sad about it because I didn't want these girls that I grew up with to think that I liked just any girl that I saw in a social setting. So that was a bit of a challenge. And I think in high school, it was a bit easier for me to navigate my identity around on how I would come out to people. And so what was easiest for me and what I started doing was I didn't even make it a big deal because to me, my sexual identity isn't my entire identity. It doesn't fall under all of the other umbrellas of who I am. Even if people who know me only see me as gay, that's not how I view myself. And so I just started casually slipping it in. I wanted to tell my mom for a long time. Even though we didn't have the best relationship, I still thought it was important that she should know. Unfortunately, it couldn't be a sit down where I explained to her how this thing about me isn't a choice and that it's just something that I feel and I love what I love. I really can't change that. But I remember the first time that my mom did approach me about it, she was sitting on the Janamaz, and Janamaz is a prayer mat that Muslims pray on. I was putting my socks on for school. One of my other family members had caught me with a friend of mine. So I went and she said, I know this is what you're feeling right now, but you shouldn't act on these feelings. Loving people of the same gender or different genders is okay, but you shouldn't physically act on your wants. And And I took that in stride. I went to school that day thinking about it the entire time, and I knew that it wasn't okay in her head and that I could never completely come out to her. Unfortunately, I've had to come out to my mom a few times in my life, and that was pretty exhausting because it was always sort of this thing where I was screaming and yelling. I said, hey, I don't like men. The next day it would be fine, and then the next week she would talk about the same thing. Like getting me married or getting me engaged or me doing this with someone or me doing that with someone, and it was really invalidating when I was growing up. It was difficult. And so to say the least, my mom isn't, and I'm not sure if she'll ever be accepting of my sexuality and this part of my identity. It seems like it's just something that I have to accept as I'm growing up. It is hard when you are coming out. You may lose some people in your life depending on how you grew up, if your family is willing to come around. I was mostly only out to my immediate family, and even then it was always just hush hush, right? Like it was something that they knew, but it was never really talked about in the open. It was always like, oh, well, this is a phase, or she'll get over it, or she'll come back. She'll realize what she's doing is wrong, and she'll get married to a man, and everything will be fruitful, and everything will be fine. Obviously, that's not the case, and I'm not straight. I think my family is having a difficult time in trying to accept me, and I'm not really sure how long that's gonna last. Obviously, they didn't react well. They were quite upset. A lot of emotional blackmail. A lot of like, well, this is your choice and you're doing it. And so when Anjali and I went viral, we were blasted throughout the media in India and Pakistan, and a lot of my family, actually my entire family, found out that I was gay. And it was a really uncomfortable experience for me because I wasn't the one telling them that. You know, and if it was up to me, I wouldn't be telling my entire family that, my mom or my dad's side. So a lot of my extended family in Pakistan found out, and I just got some really hateful messages, and it was pretty bad, to say the least. But the family members that still call me every day, I know that they love me and they still care about me despite the fact that I'm gay. And I was really scared because I thought I would lose them too, and so then I would have no family. But even with that, it's still like these family members that I'm talking about, they still have that little silver lining that they're looking for, where they're like, you know, she'll come back. She won't be who she is now, and she'll change, and she'll get married to a man, and that's it. But for the sake of keeping those relationships, the tiny bit of family relationships that I still have, I have to deal with the exhausting factor of constantly having to avoid certain conversations for me not to spiral. As I had mentioned earlier, I wasn't really able to talk to my mom about things that a teenager goes through, and because of some other factors going on in my life and in my family household, I decided that I couldn't take it anymore, and I moved out when I was 17. Coming out for me was hard. I lost a lot in coming out. I lost a lot of my family, and it was really painful. But I'm trying to see things in a positive manner, where I've not only gained the love of people who were in my life, who have accepted me since the beginning, I've also gained such a strong community that loves and accepts me as I am. That family is my chosen family. They're the ones that keep me sane. Having people in my life who share similar identities to me has really helped me in filling that gap of not having a loving family that is able to support me because of my identity. There are plenty of resources out there for financial literacy for queer youth. Try to sign up for queer youth forums, or seek communities in your neighborhood, or seek communities in your town, your city, your state, your country. And if you don't have the means to travel, talk to people online. Build a community, because community is so important. And just know that you don't have to come out while you still live at home. You can get yourself out of that situation first, and then you can come out. So you can have the space that you need to grow and evolve, especially if you don't have a loving family, or you do have a loving family but they're having a difficult time in navigating through your identity. I know that there are also resources out there, parents who are having a difficult time in accepting their children's identity. Definitely do your research on that if your parents are open to that. Just know that it will get better, and you're not the only one, I assure you. When I was growing up, I thought I was the only queer woman of color out there in the world. And then I grew up and I expanded myself to all of these other areas where I met people who shared the same identities as me, and now I call them my family, and now I call them my friends. A lot of you have asked me, how do I cope with being Muslim and queer? And how do I deal with the backlash? Number one, get rid of all the noise. I know what my relationship with my creator is, and I don't allow anyone else outside of me to define that for me. When I'm feeling anxious about not feeling close to God, I do zikr. I have a tasbih that my best friend gave me and I read the tasbih, or I go to Jummah and I pray. Music has a lot to do with how I feel about my spirituality. I listen to Qawwali, I listen to Nusrat Saab. The relationship that I share with my creator is mine only. I don't allow third parties to tell me who or what I am, and I'm very definite about my experience in being queer and being Muslim. I really appreciate you guys, and I appreciate the constant support and love that you guys shower me and Anjali with. It just makes it so much easier having a community with you, because I don't have a family that's very supportive of my sexuality. Thanks for watching! So now you can like, comment, and subscribe below. Bye! Assalamualaikum.